Member for Blaine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the member for Mulca for his contribution. We always value your contribution and we really appreciate it. I'm always amazed to see the Labor opposition coming in here and trying to rewrite history. It's like when my boys were little and they'd make a little mess in their nappy and then they'd come to me and they were so proud, Daddy, look, look at this, look at what's in my nappy, I've done a poo, and then Daddy would have to come in and, all right, son, and off we go and we'd clean it up. Well, in a similar way, the previous Labor government made a huge mess of, the list is too long, the Territory's justice system, as the Attorney General unfortunately is finding out the huge mess that's there, the mess with Naja, she's now cleaning up, a mess in the economy, record debt, record deficit, heading towards just economic destruction, a mess in our child protection system, a mess in our tourism sector, tourism sector that's been declining year on year. For, when we have some of the most beautiful and amazing tourist destinations in the world. But what I would like to speak about is a mess in Gamba management. So the previous CLP government, for all of their flaws, did a really smart thing. They introduced or expanded, I have to qualify that because I wasn't in government at the time, the free herbicide program. And I just want to speak about how fantastic that program is. So that is a program which gives free herbicide, glyphosate, commonly known as Roundup, to landholders to assist them to manage Gamba on their properties. And this is in line with the philosophy of the CLP. The CLP does not believe in the big hand of government coming down and smacking private individuals or telling people how to look after their own land. The CLP supports individual freedom, individual liberty, and empowering people to look after themselves, to look after their own property, and to be the masters of their own destiny. Our landholders in the Northern Territory are very smart. Indigenous landholders, traditional owners looking after country, freehold landholders, either people who are on small blocks in the rural area, like the member for Nelson, the member for Goyder, some of the member for Daly's constituents, or people on farms, cattle stations. Gamba is, some people call it the green bulldozer. I've seen infestations of Gamba over many years turn remnant rainforest in our tropical savanna lands, and the steady and inexorable advance of Gamba and the hot fires that come with it have turned that remnant rainforest into open grasslands that are just covered by a monoculture of Gamba. And the mechanism of that is that the Gamba grows to 3 or 4 metres high and forms an extremely dense structure of clumps, and it generally has a propensity to burn late in the season when you get extremely intense grass fires that will burn all night, all day, and they tend to overcrop the trees and they destroy the trees, and the intense heat just destroys the bushland, and you end up with just open country that only has Gamba. It's a monoculture. It's not something that our native animals particularly do well in, although the pig hunters do love it because the pigs do love the Gamba. But now Gamba's a great food for cattle, and cattle are one of the few things that can manage Gamba effectively. And our pastoralists, again, who are very wise, they can, with savvy management and rotational grazing, they can manage Gamba and get it to a point where it's not spreading too much, but you can actually manage it. So the former CLP government turbocharged the free herbicide for landholders, and that was a great program because what it did was it enabled landholders to take control of the Gamba on their property. No one wants to have an infectious weed on their property. Landholders that have cattle are happy to manage it and control it, but no one wants to see that spreading through, particularly the pristine wonders of Litchfield National Park. And so that program enabled landholders to spray out gamba on their boundaries, which assisted with their responsibilities under the Bushfires Act, maintaining a fire break. And that was a fantastic program. And it's still going, but this is what I want to get to. In 2020, the former Chief Minister, Michael Gunner, if I'm allowed to name him here, the former Chief Minister, promised us a gamba army. He promised us an army of people to be crawling all over the territory and fighting gamba tooth and nail. Well, maybe they went somewhere, but it's hard to see where they did go, because we still have gamba. It's still marching in Litchfield Park. It's still up and down the highway. Member for Barkly, you've driven that Stewart Highway quite a lot. I mean, have you seen any significant reduction in gamba? No. For the record, he's shaking his head. So I'm not sure what the gamba army did. Maybe they went and had, cappuccinos and some cold drinks. They definitely had a snazzy car, because we always saw them driving around in their freshly wrapped car. But we didn't see a lot of action. What we did see was a failure to match the funding for the free herbicide program for landholders with inflation, and particularly as COVID hit, and we all appreciate that was a very challenging time, unprecedented, the largest pandemic in 100 years. It threw a lot of things into question, and I've got here some stats from cropsmart.com.au. Glyphosate 450 was $3.60 per litre pre-COVID and spiked to over $12 a litre during COVID. So over the first 2 years of the last term, glyphosate, which is the predominant gamba, the predominant chemical used to control gamba grass, increased in price approximately 4 times. Now, I'm not sure that the budget for the free herbicide program increased to match that. So ultimately what happened was that there was less herbicide available. And that's what I heard from people in the Litchfield area, that where previously there was a strong effort from the government, the former CLP government, to make sure that there was sufficient herbicide to assist landholders to manage their boundaries, so that if they were pastoralists and gamba was already established, and there's some technical details about the different zones of gamba infestation and some areas of management, some areas of eradication. I won't go into that for now, but they could manage their boundaries so that they could manage the gamba on their property according to their own needs, and they could prevent gamba from moving off or onto their property. But under the previous Labor government, that was allowed to fall by the wayside. And what we saw happen was it became harder and harder for landholders to access herbicide via this program, with the result that landholder activity on controlling gamba on their boundaries significantly diminished. What did we see? Well, talking to people in the Litchfield area, what we did see was those gamba inspectors. Maybe this is what the gamba army were getting up to. They were driving around in their shiny car with all the wrapping on it, and they were handing out compliance notices. Now, were they driving along the Stewart Highway? Were they going and looking at Crown land, local council land? No, they were driving along the tarmac roads, and if they could see any gamba within 15 metres of the fence, one little blade of grass, then they would do a Google search, find the block of land, and then send a compliance note to the landholder. And I've seen some of these, and they, to any long-term Territorian, they boggle the mind. They were expecting landholders to do compliance to eradicate all gamba plants within, I believe it was 10 or 15 metres of the boundary by the end of February. Now, some of those listening or reading this may not be aware, but February in the NT is the middle of the monsoon. So they were expecting landholders to get out, I don't know how. You know, I tell you what, if you try to drive a tractor onto that land at that time of year in February, you'd be bogged to the axles. You wouldn't be going anywhere. You can't slash. You'd be flat out walking around pulling it out. You can't drive a Land Cruiser. It'll get bogged. Like, unless you've got a hose that's about 3 kilometres long, some of these properties, good luck. So that's what they were doing. So instead of helping landholders, supporting landholders to manage Gamba in a productive way, they were just going around using the big hand of government and whacking them and saying, here's a fine, you've got to go and do the impossible, walk around, you know, in the middle of the monsoon, try and pull these big clumps out by hand, or we're going to fine you. You're going to cop a fine. We're going to use the big stick of government to just perform enforcement, and we're not going to look at actually helping you. We're not going to look at, well, you know, do we need to increase the budget for this really useful program? No, we're not going to do that. So I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the House, because I and many people in Litchfield area that I spoke to were just so disappointed. In 2020, the former Chief Minister was going around and making such a big show, such a song and dance, you know, boundless possible, the comeback capital of the territory. His Gamba army was going to save us from the green bulldozer of Gamba grass. Well, all we got was a few public servants in a shiny car driving around writing tickets. Not useful. Anyway, I thank the member for Gwarja for bringing this motion to the House. We all, Territorians here, love and support our environment. It's one of the great things about the Territory. If we don't, you know, we all love fishing, we all love getting away on the weekend for a camp. We need the environment, we need it to be maintained for the future generations, but we also need to balance that with sustainable development. Thank you, Madam Speaker.